and welcome back to On the Grid Podcast, your favorite Formula One weekly podcast, where me, host Adrian and my co-host Ethan Evans ramble about all things Formula One. In this episode, we will be reviewing our British Grand Prix predictions, looking at a bit of news in and around the paddock. Exclusive, Daniel Ricciardo is back, and previewing Hungary and looking at our predictions ahead of Magyar Nagadic, which is my favourite thing to say in the world, Magyar Nagadic Grand Prix. But Ethan, first and foremost, how are you? How are you feeling ahead of another race weekend? Obviously, we've got a bit of a break after Silverstone. We can relax a little bit and then head into a double header before the summer break.
Well, yeah, we're recording this right after our Silverstone podcast, so we've got a nice little break up ahead of a couple of weeks until our next episode. So yeah, I am exactly how I was in the last podcast you listened to. So yes.
Yeah, I was expecting Ethan to kind of use his imagination as this podcast will be released a week after the Silverstone one. So I was expecting him to use a bit of his imagination, but you can tell Ethan Evans is not one with an imagination. He's quite boring.
Still tired from Silverstone.
I'd like to say the same. It was a very tiring day, but a fun one nevertheless. And you'll hear more about Silverstone in the previous episode. If you want to listen to that one and hear us ramble about the British Grand Prix, feel free, and then come back to this one and listen more about the news that's happening and about the Hungarian Grand Prix. But Silverstone on topic, as we've just kind of talked about it, let's kind of review our predictions from there. I don't think it went very well for me. But let's begin with our two-star predictions. So I went with a De Vries collision and Ferrari double top five. So I'm going to give myself for the Ferrari double top five. I'll give myself half a point because in qualifying, fourth and fifth in qualifying, fourth and fifth. Come on, think about it. Fourth and fifth in qualifying. In the race, they fumbled the bag, yes, but in qualifying,
you're being a little bit jammy here.
Well, okay. I think you can be. I think you can be the judge and jury.
You didn't
on this
mean
one.
qualifying at all.
You could be the judge and jury on this one.
I'm not sure about this one. I think you didn't mean qualifying at all. You meant in the race. So no, I'm not going to give it to you.
Then? Okay. I won't have it. I was trying to go for the Hail Mary and try and bait myself into half a point. But yeah, I got no points for my two-star predictions. Ethan, how did you get on? I know you had one, but you absolutely smashed.
I had one that I did absolutely smash. I had double McLaren points. And not only did they get double points, they got more points at Silverstone than they got in the entire 9 races leading up to Silverstone. So I'm very happy with that one. Knew those upgrades would work. And I had Hulkenberg to make Q3. He was a 10th off. He was a 10th off of Russell's time in Q2, so could have knocked him out, but just missed out on that one. So I was a little bit unfortunate with that.
And heading into qualifying, I had my Ferrari hat on, and Ethan had his Mercedes hat on, should I say. And none of them came to fruition. I had Leclerc on pole, which didn't happen. Verstappen in second, Hamilton third, Sainz fourth, and Perez in fifth. In a matter of fact, it was Verstappen pole, Norris in second, Piastri third, Leclerc fourth, and Sainz fifth. So I had 3 of the drivers that were in the top 5. Hamilton and Perez weren't in there, but I mean, yeah, inevitably all of them were incorrect from my point of view. Ethan, how did you get on?
I actually got on okay. If I hadn't used my my heart and used my head instead, I might have got 4 out of 5. So I went for Hamilton to get pole. I went for Verstappen to get second. Sorry, 3 out of 5. So if I put Verstappen on pole, I got that extra point. I went for Alonso third, and he was miles off it. However, I did correctly say Leclerc and Sainz fourth and fifth, so I am quite happy with that one.
And onto the race. How did you get on in the race?
Not as well. I said Hamilton to win, and he did not. I said Alonso second, and he finished seventh. Sainz third, Perez fourth. I did have Russell in fifth though, so I will take that point. So I got 4 points, this week, so I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, I did better in the race. I did predict a Max Verstappen victory, but which was inevitable. I predicted Leclerc to finish second, which, matter of fact, he finished ninth. I predicted correctly Hamilton to finish P3, which I'm very happy about. But then I went Alonso and Sainz instead of Piastri and Russell. So a 2 out of 10, 2 out of 12, if you want to add the two-star predictions. Once again, for me, it is a very, very poor weekend. But let's move into the news in the paddock. What's happened? What has been the main attraction in the paddock, Ethan? Talk to me.
Well, I think it's this old race winner's coming back on the grid, something like that. I don't know what his name is. Daniel Ricciardo, something like that.
Daniel Avocado. Does he
Something like
ring a
that.
bell?
Something like that.
Yeah, but yeah,
Don't know. Apparently, he's this race winner. He's got like 8 race wins. Something like that.
it's not too many though, is it? Surely it's not. It's not on the level of Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton.
Not quite, but eight's better than none.
Yeah, and he's joining into an Alfa Romeo, Alfa Tauri team that are kind of asking for a driver to help them take that truck off the back row into the points. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo.
Well,
He's
it might happen. He has got more race wins than both Ferrari drivers combined. So you never know.
Wow. Oh, wow. He's gone there. Okay. Okay. He's gone there.
Yes, I have.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Less of a banter, the better, because we're going to have a very aggressive rest of the podcast if we continue in that direction. But Daniel Ricciardo is back. He's back at AlphaTauri replacing Nick De Vries. I think we touch upon Nick De Vries first before having the discussion about Daniel Ricciardo. After not even half a season, they've not even given him to after Belgium. Nick De Vries' F1 career has been cut short. Ethan, I know his performances have not been brilliant, but do you think that it's fair on him that he's been chopped after what, 10 races? Do you think it's fair for a rookie to be only given 10 races and to be kind of gone, see you later, goodbye?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the harm is in waiting until the summer break, really. There's 2 more races, and then you've got 4 weeks, and then you can kind of justify it a little bit more rather than making it, mid-season. I think overall, we know his performances haven't been good enough, but it's a strange time to do it when the car's not very good. It's nowhere near as good as it was at the start of the season. I think a lot of teams have caught up and overtaken. And now neither driver is able to fight for the points. Whereas, towards the start of the season, Yuki was able to bag in a couple of points. But then again, Tsunoda's only on 2 points. So is it a little bit harsh? Possibly. But I think they've got a little tactic on their hands, Red Bull, which we'll go into in a minute.
Yeah, we say tactic, and I think the tactic you're on about is my next point with Sergio Perez lucky escape. And I've actually written that on my pad, by the way. I've not like said it because of Ethan saying it. I've actually got it written on my pad. Sergio Perez lucky escape. But do you think inevitably at the end of the season, after seeing Daniel Ricciardo in quotation marks perform in an F1 car once again, whether it be getting points here or there and just showing levels of consistency, do you think that Perez is going to get binned off by Red Bull inevitably by the end of the season? Is that what we're potentially hinting at?
Maybe not by the end of the season, but certainly he won't be there at the start of the 2025 season. I think what they've done here is you say Perez lucky escape. I'm not sure if it's a lucky escape in the sense that he would get fired mid-season. I don't see that happening. he has won 2 races this season. So it would be very harsh for them to do that, especially when he is still second in the Drivers' Championship. I think what they're doing is they are looking to put a bit of pressure on Perez, to get in performance and say, hey, we've got Daniel Ricciardo here waiting in the wings. And they want to see his performance. Apparently, in a tyre test they done at Silverstone, his quickest lap was good enough for the front row. So that tells you he's already within 0.2 of Verstappen. So, maybe they're looking at it in the sense that, if Ricciardo absolutely wipes the floor with Tsunoda in these next 12 races, we know how good Tsunoda's been, particularly at the start of the season. They could say, oh, hang on a second, why don't we just stick him in from next season? Perez isn't doing the business, so let's stick him in. Alternatively, it provides a good benchmark for Tsunoda, because what we've found as well when we've been grading Tsunoda and De Vries is we've not sure which way to go. We're not sure whether the car's that bad, so Tsunoda dragging it to 10th or 11th is a 10 out of 10 performance, or whether, Nick De Vries is underperforming. So Ricciardo is a race winner. I'm sure, give him a couple of races, he will get up to speed and he will put in good performances. So if Tsunoda continues to beat him, then it proves Tsunoda is the real deal, and maybe they'll look at developing him to replace Perez as a longer term option.
Touching upon Yuki Tsunoda, obviously Daniel Ricciardo coming into AlphaTauri is going to make him the more experienced of the two drivers. But do you think that with Yuki Tsunoda's know-how at AlphaTauri, we obviously know that Daniel Ricciardo has raced with Toro Rosso before, but it's nowhere near what AlphaTauri is now. Do you think that Daniel Ricciardo will be taking tips from Yuki Tsunoda with this year's car? Obviously, Daniel Ricciardo's not raced in F1 this season. Will Yuki Tsunoda be showing the benchmark for Daniel Ricciardo in the first couple of races before Daniel Ricciardo shows the benchmark for Yuki Tsunoda?
Possibly. And maybe they've swapped them now. So, Ricciardo has a couple of races to get his eye in, get back to racing, because he has been sat on the sidelines doing nothing since November. So maybe it's a little bit of that, but also, I think Ricciardo's been in F1 for over a decade now. I think he joined in 2011. So inevitably he will come good. He didn't have a good time at McLaren, but I think he wants to prove that's an anomaly. He wants to get back on the grid. He's swallowed his pride a little bit and gone to probably the worst car on the grid, because it has that link to Red Bull and it has an opportunity to get back to that top car, to what is probably one of the quickest Formula One cars of all time and one of the most dominant Formula One cars of all time. So I'm sure there'll be a little bit of that playing in the back of his mind, thinking, if I put in, 12 good races between now and the end of the season, I could find myself at the Red Bull next season. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. See that battle between Tsunoda and Ricciardo, who comes out on top. And if Perez doesn't improve, I think next season you could be seeing a different pairing at Red Bull.
You touched upon McLaren there, and it perfectly digresses into my next point regarding Williams and McLaren on the rise. Upgrades have tremendously helped both teams kind of in their own battles. Williams battle for points, McLaren battling now for podiums / the higher echelon of the points. Do you think these upgrades have made Williams not a backmarker anymore, but a points contender? And my second point, do you think the upgrades have made McLaren not only a points contender, but a potential podiums contender from now on?
Well, with Williams, that goes hand in hand with one of my predictions, which I'll get into in a little bit. I think Hungary will be a big test to see how they perform on a more traditional circuit where it's a lot less power dependent. It's a lot more downforce orientated. You need a lot of downforce to get through there quickly because of the tight tight corners at the Hungaroring. So that will be a big test. And I wouldn't be surprised if Williams aren't on the same level they have been in the last couple of races. But that is to be expected. We know that Williams is very good in a straight line, but it's not the best around tight corners. That being said, they still done very well at Silverstone. So it can go either way. With McLaren, again, we're going to really see how good those upgrades are and whether they can mount a charge to fight these three teams ahead of them in the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari, Aston Martin and Mercedes. I think Mercedes might be a little bit too far because they seem to still have a good car. But if Aston Martin, if their form continues as the way it is, and Ferrari continue with their poor performance from Silverstone, you could see McLaren close that gap and fight for fourth or third in the Constructors' Championship quite easily.
And just touching upon the two rookies that are at both teams, Sargent and Piastri. Obviously, they're more experienced teammates in Albon and Norris. Albon finished P8 in Silverstone, with Lando Norris finishing on the podium in P2 for McLaren. Do you think the two rookies are getting to grips with Formula One? I'd say more with Piastri. He's kind of bedded into McLaren quicker than Sargent has bedded into Williams. And do you think that the upgrades have helped both of them kind of slowly close the gap on their more experienced teammates? Probably more Sargent than Piastri, because I think Piastri has performed near enough to the levels that Lando Norris has performed so far this season.
I think Piastri has always been quite close to Norris. You know, he's had a couple of anomaly performances here and there. I think Austria was a big one. People were criticising him after there when he didn't have the upgrades Norris did. And you've seen when he does have the upgrades, and something I didn't realise at the time, Piastri doesn't have the upgraded rear wing that Norris has. So he doesn't even have all of the upgrades. So to be so close to him just goes to show how good a driver he is. I don't think, if I was McLaren, I wouldn't have any concerns with Piastri. Given this, he's only had 10 races in Formula One. I think he's done a brilliant job. He's ahead of Gasly in the Drivers' Championship, which would have been the car he was driving this season had he not switched, which is looking like it was a good choice now. And then with Sargent, it's like we've been saying for the last couple of weeks now, he just needs to have a consistent run of performances where, you know, he doesn't have to match Albon, but as long as he's within, you know, 4 or 5 places, so say Albon finishes 10th, as long as he's sort of 13th, 14th, then it's that sign of development. He's improving his performance, and that's a big thing that I think Williams will want to see in order to keep him on for next season.
Our last talking point in this news segment: silly season has officially started. I've seen so many rumours circulating Norris, so many rumours circulating Leclerc, Sainz as well, Sergio Perez, so many things are happening, which could potentially see a whole mixed up grid for 2024. Let's start off with McLaren and Lando Norris. Apparently, Ferrari and Red Bull have both contacted Lando Norris regarding his availability for 2024. At this current stage, Ethan, do you think that if Norris was to make the step to Ferrari, would it be a backward step? And do you think he is to make the step up to Red Bull, potentially with Daniel Ricciardo being a contender and Sergio Perez being a contender for that second seat at Red Bull?
Well, I think it's you kind of have got a decision to make if you're Norris. If it was at the start of the season, it would have been a much easier call. However, now it's a little bit trickier in the sense of you don't really know where that McLaren's going. If it continues to perform at the level it has in the last couple of races, you'd want to stick there. especially because he's been with McLaren since he was like 7 years old. So he's been brought through the ranks with McLaren. They've nurtured him, and he's been with them for the last 5 seasons now. That team is going to be built around Norris. So it's whether he wants to continue. He's seen enough progress where he thinks, yeah, I'm gonna put my confidence in McLaren. They've shown that they are making developments. They've got this wind tunnel opening in a couple of years' time. And whether he can be really the central figure at McLaren and take that team back to where it has been in the past, for so many occasions where it's been fighting for wins and championships. I think that Red Bull seat is almost at this stage like a cursed seat. How many drivers have we seen come and go alongside Verstappen, because Verstappen is a different breed of racer. So why would you leave a setup where you're the main man to go into a setup where you're always trying to play catch up? You're always trying to fight with Verstappen, and inevitably, because he's been there for so long now, the team is built around him. Would you not want to have a similar setup to Verstappen, but at your own team that's you've been with for the last 15 years? So who knows? I would say Norris is going to stay at McLaren, though, for the foreseeable future.
On to another man that has been contacted by Red Bull, Charles Leclerc. Apparently contacted by Red Bull, Mercedes, and Aston Martin regarding his availability. With Fred Vasseur has come out and said that they are prioritizing Leclerc's contract over Sainz's contract for the time being. As realistically, they want to tie down the Monegasque driver for a few more seasons. Ethan, if you're Leclerc, do you stay at Ferrari where you are kind of treated as the number one? Because we have said in many of episodes this series, there is no equal treatment at Ferrari. Carlos Sainz is kind of treated as the number two, with Charles Leclerc the number one, even though Sainz is ahead of him in the points in the Drivers' Championship. What do you do in Leclerc's situation? Do you stick with Ferrari? Do you potentially battle your way to a Red Bull or to even a Mercedes or to even Aston Martin, where you're likely to be the number two and not the number one, similar to Lando Norris's situation?
Yeah, again, it's difficult. Red Bull could be an option. I think Mercedes would be when Hamilton retires. They're obviously not going to replace George Russell, and Hamilton is going to stay as long as he wants to, realistically. Yeah, I think those talks with Mercedes have been going on for a while now, and I think it's more of a case of Mercedes want to know what his future plans are. Hamilton, within 3 or 4 years, is going to retire, you would have thought. So they want to know where he is for the future and whether they can make some early contact just to, sow the seeds now so that, in a few years' time when Hamilton announces his retirement, they can jump straight in and Leclerc's good to go. With Aston Martin, it's a strange one because Alonso's performs at such a good level. You wouldn't have thought he's going to be replaced. And I think he's contracted next season as well. So the only other thing is whether they replace Stroll. And you got to say that seems unlikely with his dad owning the team, even though he is a businessman, and Stroll at the minute is costing him a lot of money, because at this point in time, Aston Martin would be second in the constructors if they had Alonso and Leclerc in that car. Whether that would continue with how they've slowed down in recent races, who knows? But yeah, you've got to say they would be second in the Constructors' Championship if they had two top drivers, like Mercedes do, like even Red Bull and Ferrari do. But I think something that has been very much overlooked by people talking about Leclerc is his love of Ferrari. I think here it means a great deal to him driving for Ferrari. So I think as long as there is a clear path moving forward and there is progress, I think he'll stay at Ferrari.
And my last talking point regarding silly season is the clear number two at Ferrari, Carlos Sainz. Obviously, I'd say kind of overlooked by Ferrari with them prioritising Leclerc's contract over his. Do you see him moving elsewhere? If it comes to potentially Norris coming to Ferrari or a seat at Red Bull opening, we know that Carlos Sainz has been affiliated previously with the Red Bull program, obviously being at Toro Rosso, etc. But do you think that there could be any link up between the Red Bull team and Carlos Sainz in the near future?
Possibly, yeah. I think Sainz has been massively disrespected by Ferrari and Ferrari fans, to be honest. In 2021, Sainz beat Leclerc over the course of the season. 2022, of course, he didn't. But now in their third season together, he's beating him again. It's only by about 10 points, but Sainz has also been a lot more consistent. He hasn't had those top-level performances, as we've said multiple times, but he's been far more consistent than Leclerc this season. And I think he's gone under the radar so much that maybe he is looking elsewhere. Maybe he does feel a little bit disrespected at Ferrari, and he feels he should have a fair crack at the number one seat. So we'll have to wait and see. He does have that. Well, he did have that Red Bull link. He was actually teammates with Max Verstappen at Toro Rosso, and they were performing to a very similar level at that time when they were teammates for that year. I think Christian Horner's even come out and said it was a 50-50 decision as to whether they promote Sainz or Verstappen when they came into the team. So it could have been Sainz in that seat, and we could be talking about a different driver dominating at the sport at the minute. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not sure on that one. But I could see that happening. Yeah.
On to our Hungary predictions. Ethan, kick us off with your 2-star predictions. What are they?
I've gone quite bold. I've gone Ricciardo to beat Tsunoda. I think he'll come in and do the business from the get-go. I've also gone, this will surprise you, I've gone for a Williams double Q1 exit. The car's not really suited to these high downforce tracks, and I think we could see a shock on the cards.
A shock indeed. I've gone quite similar to you with the Ricciardo one, but I've gone Ricciardo top 10. I could see Ricciardo. It'd be nice for the Honey Badger to return to the sport and get himself even a point. Even a point would be nice, which would close the gap to Yuki Tsunoda to 1 point after one race. So yeah, that would definitely put him back on the map. And I've gone with a qualifying one like you have, but I've gone Perez not qualifying for Q3 once again. I think that
how big a prediction is that at this stage, though? How much of that's basically like saying Verstappen pole at this stage.
Yeah, mate. If you see Perez in Q3, you won't be saying that though, would you? Realistically.
Yeah, but realistically, at this point in time, saying Perez not to qualify for Q3 is the same thing as saying,
you know what?
Verstappen to get pole, Verstappen to win.
Scrap it. Okay, scrap it. Perez to not make it out of Q1. I've scrapped it. Perez to not make it out of Q1. Yes, you have reeled me in and you have annoyed me. Perez to not make it out of Q1. I'll go with it. I was going to put it down, but I want to go safer just to get a point. But you know what? You've made me go for a bold prediction. So there you go. I've done it. Let's go on to our quali predictions. And I've gone with the inevitable Max Verstappen pole position. Charles Leclerc for me. I'm going to put him in second. I'm going optimistic after some woes in Silverstone. I've gone with optimism at the Hungaroring. I've gone with Hamilton in P3. Every single time I seem to put Hamilton in P3 in qualifying, he seems to finish on the podium. So I'm going to continue with that. I've gone with George Russell in P4 and Carlos Sainz in P5.
So for my top 5 in qualifying, I've gone for Max Verstappen pole, of course. I've gone for Carlos Sainz in second. I think this is the weekend where he has an improved performance and really shows what he's worth. I gone Lando Norris third, and then I've gone for Mercedes in fourth and fifth. I've gone for Hamilton and Russell.
Well. The upgrades have clearly gotten to your head, and they're clearly scrambling your head a little bit. But for the race, what have you gone for the race? Have you kept Lando in the top five? I've said, have you kept Lando in the top five?
I have, yeah. I think I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm buying into the upgrades a little bit too much, but Norris is a fantastic driver, and you can't say you'd be surprised if you see him in the top five on Saturday.
Race predictions, please, Ethan.
So I've gone for Verstappen to convert his pole into a win. I've gone for Lewis Hamilton to take second. He runs well at Hungary. I don't think that'll be too much of a shock. I've gone for Carlos Sainz to finish third, George Russell to finish fourth, and Norris to drop back slightly and finish fifth.
For me, I have gone with Verstappen win. I've gone quite similar with Hamilton in second. I've gone with Charles Leclerc in third. I've gone Carlos Sainz in fourth, and I've gone with Lando Norris in fifth. I've put him inside the top five. I think he'll have a good Sunday, and I think potentially from the brinks of the top 10, I think he'll claw up the order to finish in fifth. But that rounds off yet another episode of On the Grid. Thank you for listening to episode 22 of the On the Grid podcast. We'll be back next week reviewing the Hungarian Grand Prix and previewing the final race of the first half of the season at Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.